The very first shots of World War II were fired in 1939 when Germany invaded Poland. And one of the first places that they occupied was the Danish island of Bornholm. But it wasn't just German soldiers that took an interest in the seemingly insignificant chunk of rock. But what exactly are they claiming? Well, the first thing that they're claiming is land. Since the Second World War, Denmark has claimed this entire area here, which is a part of Greenland. Even though it's separated from mainland Greenland by this little bit of sea, well, right now, neither country has ever actually wanted to fight over the Arctic. If global temperatures continue to rise at the rate that they are now, then the Arctic will be completely melted in a couple of decades. Once that happens, we'll see all of these countries scrabbling to set up as many military bases as possible. But until then, it's probably not worth worrying about. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Even though both countries technically own all of these areas, they don't want to actually control them. Also be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Anyway, I'll see you next time. Sure, they might set up the occasional research station, but beyond that, it's never really worth it. They've never needed the resources in the Arctic, and they can't really use the trade routes either, because they already have much easier ones. As such, both countries have been working together on the Joint Arctic Research Committee. Their goal is to do research in the Arctic and share it with each other. Iceland has been claiming all of this area here for decades, but they haven't done anything to actually defend it. In fact, they're not planning on doing anything anytime soon. Why? Well, it's because they know that defending the claim would cost too much money. For a small country like Iceland, spending money on the military isn't a priority. If they spent as much money on the military as Denmark, for example, they would need to triple their tax rate. No one lives there, so you don't have to worry about hurting anyone. Then why did they make them in the first place? Well, the answer is the same as why they stopped making them in the first place. It's all about money. When countries made their claims, they did it to attract investment. Companies wouldn't invest in Iceland unless they knew that they owned the resources in the area. And without these investments, Iceland couldn't grow. Of course, now things have changed. Iceland doesn't need foreign investors anymore. They can fund their growth with taxes. And an ice cover means that it's hard to detect anything going on. They also don't have the money to defend their claims. In reality, the only countries that can really defend polar claims are superpowers. The US and Russia are the most obvious examples. And in their case, it's even written into law. Both countries signed an agreement in 1990 that said that they would patrol the area near their claims. But these laws weren't made just for economic reasons. They were also made to stop the Cold War from turning hot. This whole area here is full of nuclear reactors and early warning stations. As such, both the US and Russia keep a close eye on each other's activities. In fact, the CIA used to drop spies into the Arctic all the time. They would parachute in and then stay hidden in the ice until they had to leave. So it's unsurprising that many countries are investing heavily into the Northern Sea route here instead. This route cuts straight across the Arctic and is much shorter than going through the Suez. According to them, these ships will be able to clear a path through the ice for other ships. In the last decade or so, it's become clear that the Arctic contains more oil than anywhere else on Earth. Just take a look at this map. All of these green spots are oil fields found within the Arctic Circle. But oil isn't the only reason. There's also gas, lots and lots of gas. These deposits are so big that if they were their own country, they would be the fourth biggest producer on Earth, behind Russia, the United States and Saudi Arabia, but ahead of Iran and even China. Not to mention that oil and gas aren't the only resources in the Arctic. There's also lots of minerals, including rare earth minerals that are used in everything from fighter jets to mobile phones. They've also claimed this archipelago here, the Mertz region. So how do you get to it? Well, or you could do what the Canadians did and just wait for it to melt. Since the 1970s, that was until recently. Last year, Canada gave the go-ahead for the first ever oil drilling project in the Arctic. Norway has claimed this entire area despite the fact that it's underwater, and the United States has claimed this entire area despite the fact that it doesn't really have any land there. It also attracted the attention of the Soviet Union. They sent a battleship over to take control of the island and kicked out the Germans. But then they didn't give it back to Denmark when the war was over. Instead, they just kept it. Oh, and not just them. The United States, Canada, Iceland, Norway, Finland, Sweden, Denmark itself, all of these countries have all at one point or another laid claim to parts of the Arctic, but almost none of them actually own any of it. So why do they want it so badly? Hi, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the weird war over the Arctic. Specifically, we'll be looking at polar claims then and now. So let's get into it. Well, no one. There are two main reasons for this. The first is that no country owns anything past the 12-mile limit from their coastline. This line is the 200-meter depth line, meaning anything deeper than 200 meters belongs to no one. And the second is that even if a country does own part of the Arctic seabed, they generally don't own the resources in it. Take, for example, the Faroe Islands, which belong to Denmark. Denmark owns the seabed around the islands, but the fishing rights there belong to the European Union. As I said, since the end of the Second World War, quite a few countries have laid claim to parts of the Arctic. You may be thinking, wait a minute, if these countries don't own the Arctic, who does? So why do countries want the Arctic anyway? But all of this stuff isn't just lying around ready to be picked up. It's trapped under hundreds or even thousands of feet of ice. But oil isn't the only reason that countries want the Arctic. Another huge one is trade. But trade isn't the only reason countries want the Arctic. Another one is espionage. If you think about it, and finally, there's one more reason that countries want the Arctic. The truth is, they don't. What if countries don't really care about defending their claims, and as well as not needing investments? But the truth is that this whole story is a lot less dramatic than it seems, of course. This situation might change in the future, and that's it for this video. Let me know what you thought down below.